When my daughter was diagnosed with autism, I had my initial emotion was, but the stats are 1 in 4. How did I get 4 in 4? And then the fact that my daughter is actually adopted from Cambodia, so it wasn't hereditary. Then I had my very next moment was, I was meant to be. I was meant to be their mother.
Hello and welcome to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. We're here to help you navigate life while disrupting the status quo. Our discussions cover a number of topics relevant to everyday life. We discuss everything from relationships to entrepreneurship. We also engage in some difficult but important conversations. And now, here are your hosts, Brian and Tanya Hamilton.
Welcome to episode 7 of Disrupt the Everyday podcast. Today we're discussing mental health from the perspective of a child and a parent of an individual navigating challenges related to mental health, and from a personal perspective as well. Today we're joined by Yassin Hall. Yassin, thanks for joining us today.
It is a pleasure. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is staying safe. I am Yassin Hall. I'm a self-made multimillionaire. I am the CEO and founder of BossClassLLC.com, where I have had the pleasure of educating others how to sell on Amazon like a boss. We have over 6,000 students making 6 figures in just 1 year time. I'm also a mental health advocate for change. My background stems from being a mother of 4 children that are living with special abilities, because I don't believe in the word disability. And I'm also a daughter of a violent, paranoid schizophrenic that tried to take my young life at the age of 12. But God, we are here today. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. Again, self-made millionaire. And, when we talk about mental health, and I think that's where we'll kind of focus today. You mentioned growing up with a mother who dealt with significant mental health challenges or issues, however you want to think of it. And, you actually wrote a book documenting that journey.
Yes.
Could you talk to us about that?
Yes, it's one of the pivotal things that growing up was painful, and I turned my pain into purpose. Didn't know at the time the message and the lesson behind what I had to go through as a child that had a mother living with an undiagnosed depression. So from my research, she was postpartum depression, undiagnosed, because these terms did not exist on the island where I'm from, actually from the Virgin Islands. So I'm using these terms now. Back then, she was known as 2 things. She was either demonic or crazy. That was it, right? So we went through life, and I was a very angry, confused teenager because I couldn't understand why no one else on the island looked like her or acted like her. At the era of her time, she was the only woman that walked the streets at that era. She's the only woman. So she was visible. Where she would portray herself every day would be on the waterfront area. And this was the only main road at that time. So everyone on the island saw my mother sitting on the bush and talking to herself, laughing to herself with me in tow. And it was a very painful thing to watch her go through that sad point, because I wanted to know what was wrong with her. Why is she, 1 minute she's singing Bob Marley songs with me and dancing around her room, and then the next thing it's like she's laughing with herself and have 7 different personalities and switching tones, made up her own language, and I couldn't get any answers. And being that I was her child, I was then stigmatized as well. I showed no symptoms, A+ student, honor roll student, but the whole island seemed to be putting me in a bubble with her. So I didn't have any friends. I was bullied for 15 years of my life for nothing else than my mother. And that paid a toll on my mental health as well, growing up confused. And it was just, I realized after going back home and writing and penning my journey of that era in time with my mother, I remember going back to speak to the children in the schools and realize 33 years later, this is still happening with no results of solutions. And it was in that moment of speaking to those kids and asking the principal and the counselors, why are these children not getting the services they need to cope? Because that's what I want. I needed services to cope, but there was none available to me. So we haven't changed from the time that I went through this process to now. Nothing had changed. So I came back to the States, did a video that actually went viral talking about the problem. And it was a very emotional, it came from the heart problem. And from that, I ignited change. I went back to the Virgin Islands and developed an Ending the Stigma USBI campaign in which the community outcry donated. So we were able to speak to every single high school, every single middle school. We were on all the radio stations and media outlets. Now, there was a lot of pushback from that. But I firmly believe in God put me in that position and put me through this in order to make a change. And from speaking to those schools and on the airway, I was able to change 3 legislative laws as it pertains to mental health. So now the schools have counselors for mental health. Now we have the resources, and now they're in the process of building a mental health facility. And one of the major changes that I was so blessed for is that one of the nonprofits that were able to open up after I brought the whole, open Pandora's box, they were able to secure a $300,000 grant that gives every single public school student free mental health.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Now, if you wouldn't mind, I kind of want to delve into kind of some of the specifics about the challenges that your mom was living through,
Sure.
because again, it's not something that a lot of people have exposure to. So we really just want to drive home that understanding of what comes with that, with those issues.
Oh, so like I said, my mom went through from postpartum depression and went with depression untreated for 12 years of my life. So that looked like sadness. She started to stop having relationships with anybody. The only person she spoke to was my grandmother, her mom. That was the only interaction she would have. Other than that, she lived what I call now a free life of solitude. Her mind was free. She did not have to worry about raising me. She did not have to worry about bills. Pretty much all her essentials, food and stuff was taken care of by my grandmother. She would feed her. Even in her 50s and 60s, she still had to come on when that street light came on to protect her more so than, protect other people. The violence didn't start until when I was 12 years old. And this is the pivotal part in my life that I will never forget. It started out with her arguing with my grandmother, and they started to have an argument about me, and it became a tug of war. So my grandmother was pulling me on my left side, and my mom was pulling me on my right side, and they were virtually just fighting for me. And my grandmother didn't want me to leave. My mother wanted me to go with her. Where? I don't know where going with her looked like. Where were we going? She couldn't answer that question. My mom ultimately won the battle by pulling on my hair and actually like pulling my hair out. So my grandmother let go. And we went to the bus stop. And that was the first time I heard her talk about in her own made up language. She was sitting on the steps and we were waiting for the bus. And she just made up this whole language on her own. Like, it blew my mind because I'm like, who does this? We got on the bus and I'm so scared. I'm terrified. I didn't say anything because I didn't know what to say, because now my mom has now metaphor into something that I've never experienced before. So I was terrified. In my mind, I knew I was going to die that day. My grandmother knew it too, because the minute we were walking out the house, she went on her knees and started praying to God. And that was the last visual I had of my grandmother when we left. We were while on the bus, I did remember that the bus made a stop for about 15, 20 minutes in front of McDonald's. So the spirit told me, find a way to get off this bus, because wherever this is going, this is fearful. I was afraid of my mother. I could just feel it in my pores, and I could see it in her eyes and her rage. She was in a sense of, I'm going to take this child out. That's how I felt. She didn't say anything, but I just sensed it, that this was her ultimate darkest moment. It was dark. And I went and I said, I need to use the restroom. So my mother not only walked through McDonald's and walked in the bathroom, she walked in the stall with me. And I, of course, under those circumstances, I could not use the bathroom because that's not what I really wanted to do. So she started to beat me in the stall, like push me around the stall, my head against the stall. And that was the very first time my mother had ever been violent in that manner. I was like, oh my God, today I'm going to die because I had scratches on my face and nobody, as I was walking through McDonald's, saw these things. There were other people in the stall, but what were they to do? In that culture is like see, but don't see, And again, I looked at the bus and I said, I got to do something. And I took off my one shoe. And I got back, left it in McDonald's, walked on the bus. My original intent was I was hoping someone would have said, young lady, you left your shoe. And then I could have brought the attention, but that didn't happen. I got back on the bus and sat down. And I told her I left my shoe. My shoe fell off in McDonald's. And she was upset and she cursed at me and told me, go get your shoe. And I got off the bus and just ran. And I ran and I ran. And she was running after me. And now she's not only running after me, but she's screaming at me, hold that child. I am going to kill her. And the pedestrians are now trying to hold her back and she's knocking them down like bowling pins. I actually looked back one time and saw her fling a man completely over her shoulder. And when I saw that, I looked up at the heavens and I said, God, if you exist, please save me because I'm going to die. And lo and behold, I felt my legs lift the floor. And I thought, wow, oh my God, thank you, God. But what it was is some painters that were passing by, and I call them my guardian angels. Some painters were passing by in a painter's truck and had grabbed me by my back collar and pulled me into the truck and saved me that day. Now she followed the truck, and it's only so far the truck, so far you can go on an island. She will find it. She found it, and the one scene that I wish somebody had just pulled me in the back, but unfortunately I witnessed, I was standing with my face against the mirror, and I saw her fighting the police. I saw her fighting the ambulance EMTs, and it wasn't until a van pulled up in all white. And what I clarified at that time looked like a cloth full of zippers. We know that's restraining now, but in my vision as a child, that's what it looked like. And then they tackled my mother to the floor like she was a criminal, and then zipped her up in this thing, and then pretty much lifted her from the ground and threw her in the back of the van head first. And that is a picture in my mind that I could never unsee, and I've seen them do that at least 50 to 100 times in my life, because there were other instances where she had done that before and acted out in this rage before. And it was just, in that moment, they took her, she was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenic, and the next day, she was home. Yeah.
Crazy.
That was one of the laws that I changed.
I was just going to say, so my past is working at Children's Aid here in Canada, and I would be your protection worker type situation, right? So my thought, my question was going to be, what happened after that? Did your grandma, did child services come in? Did your grandma, take guardianship of you? What happened after that?
So after that, she came home the very next day. But in this new reality, I didn't exist. So in the house, the same name that she gave me and blessed me with, she no longer called it. I was now that child or that girl. That's it for 33 years. That's what she called me. When we would sit at the dining room table, she would only speak to my grandmother. If I said something or asked her a question, she would respond to my grandmother. She would never look at me. And we slept on the same twin bed. And it's like I wasn't even there. So for a long time in my life, and I still kind of do it now, I sleep on like a quarter of the bed. I haven't moved to the middle yet, but but yeah, and that's how we lived for a long time. But the strangest thing is, if I went out and I was walking down in the park, she would be in the park vicinity, circling the entire park. It's like she's protecting me, but she wasn't ever acknowledging like I existed. It's like her subconscious knew that we had a connection, but now it no longer knew what that connection was. At least coming from my view. I can't speak to what was actually going through her mind, but that's how it felt to me. Like she was guarding me from harm and from a distance, or wondering who I was from a distance, and would come home and it's like, hey mom, I'm here, and nothing. No eye contact, no verbal contact, definitely no physical contact. She did try, and I'm kind of skeptical now that I look back at it. I wonder if she was trying to kill me or she was having some sort of personality disorder, because she tried to put the pill at the age of 16. She tried to put the pillow over my head and while I was sleeping to suffocate. But then when I woke up, it was like a different person. So it was just very strange and confusing. Where Child Protective Services came in, of course, to this point, after that, my grandmother and the court system took forever to even bring the case into, because now my grandmother and my father's side of the family were trying to get guardianship for me. And my grandmother was trying to get medical power of attorney so that she can, have the say whether she should be voluntarily or forcibly taken into, the mental facility. So we did have to go through that court system, and social services did intervene, and they placed me Monday through Friday with my grandmother and on the weekends with my father's side. The court did, for the strangest reason, my grandmother loved me and she wanted me, and I completely get that. And it also came from a sense of mother's guilt, which I totally understood once I had my children of different disabilities, that, she wanted to do better. My grandmother wanted to do better than what my mom was doing. And in that essence of guilt, she still wanted me around my mom and wanted me around her. And she felt that that was important. And I look back at the time, I was like, why do you even want me here? Like, this wasn't happiness for me. This was a very toxic, confusing situation, but I'm grateful for it because it opened my eyes when it was time for me to have my own children, to adapt with the different differentiations of what I would be dealing with as a parent. So, it's amazing how things happen to bring you forward when you're in your adult life, and you go, aha, I'm so glad that she did fight for me. And I'm so glad that she gave me the exposure of seeing my mother like this, because it made it easier for me to deal with my own children who are going through similar things.
Yeah, I always say it's almost like that being equipped naturally, like not doing any courses or going to school, but when you can sit back how many years later and say, okay, I know how to deal with this.
Yes.
Because of
I saw
what
that.
happened in the past, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, was your mother able to at any point receive any help or any professional help in terms of the challenges that she was going through?
Not like talk therapy and nothing like that. No, there was nothing available. So they just medicated her. That was her option. And then when her body would start to reject the medication, or she'd get immune to the medication, they would wean her off of whatever she had. So in those weaning moments were her ultimate worst moments. And then put back on another type of medication and try that medication. With paranoid schizophrenic of her level, I don't even know if the talk therapy at that point would have worked. You know what I mean? She had already developed such a severe case of it that she should have had therapy prior to, in her depressed state, before getting into this mania state. Because now all the medication did was catatonic. So she was just zoned out most of the day. When she was on her medication and would take walks, it stopped the voices in her mind, and she probably had two personalities versus the 7 or 8 that I recognized when she was not on her medication. So my mother went from, and this is any day, all day thing, that she would go from one moment of laughing to herself, and these laughter could last an hour long. I didn't even know the body could even laugh an hour long. I've tried it. No, it doesn't work. We laugh and then we take a breath and then we come back up. But she would have like an hour long laughter. And I wanted to know what she was laughing at so I could laugh too, because this wasn't funny to me. This was like,
Mm-hmm.
what are you laughing at? There's nothing funny about this. That's how I felt as a child. But whatever was going on in her mind was funny. And then it could switch from that to like banging and breaking stuff around the house and pulling the sheets off the bed, cutting the sheets because the germs were in the sheets. And then it would go to the point that she'll go down in the yard and rub mud all over herself. And it was just the most bizarre. And this is a day-to-day thing of like, it should have its own TV show as to, what these different things she would look like. And then she'll have dinner or throw the food on the wall and rub it on the wall. It was just one bizarre day at a time, every day. There's days she would just take off her clothes, walk around the house. She would not go outside without clothes on. I think because she was afraid of my grandmother. But some and here's the strangest thing. So my grandmother, when she would go through her lowest point of kind of like coming off one medication and before she can go back on another medication, and she would really like start arguing and doing all these strange things. When my grandmother would go to court and try to get her seen by a doctor, and then they would issue the order for her to go to the doctor's office, she would sit down there and you would swear nothing is wrong with my mother. Like my mom has a PhD in education. She would have a full-blown, normal conversation with the doctor and then come out talking her own language and being her own. It was like Twilight though.
Wow.
It's like she knew when to be right, and it was bizarre. It made my grandmother look like she was out of her mind, because there's nothing wrong with this woman. I just had a whole full-blown 1-hour conversation with her and we talked about everything. And then the next moment we get out the office, as soon as you walk out the office, she's talking to herself, laughing to herself, having his own conversation and languages with herself. And it was just mentally exhausting to watch and deal with.
So you've been support to many since, I guess, in all of your adult age, right?
Yes.
I know you're in Atlanta. We're in Ontario, Canada, and we were just told that we're now in our third lockdown province-wide for the next 4 weeks. So, at this point, we're supposed to be home unless if you got to do groceries, doctors, go for a walk, that type of thing. Now, I don't know the numbers, but I do know that since this pandemic started, I'm sure in the States as well, right? And here that mental health has increased.
Oh
Now,
gosh.
right? So you being a support, I'm just thinking like in this next month, I know that myself included, like I'm just about at my limits, right? Like when you have your kids, you're trying to balance work, you don't know when they're going to tell you schools are going to go remote. There's just so many things. So as a support system for people, you have any suggestions for,
Oh.
how to just stay, grounded and stay sane during this time?
So like I tell, I tell my clients here that if you see anyone on Facebook, you need to make your own positive realm. You need to make your own positive world, right? And if that means blocking the negativity, do so. Stay in motivation and inspiration mode. Listen to podcasts that are about motivation and coping mechanism skills, because that is the key, is the coping mechanisms. Google coping mechanisms. Google apps that help you meditate, apps that help you learn how to deal with whatever feelings that you're having right now. Definitely exercise. Definitely take walks. Make sure that you're reaching out to family members. I think that this COVID should have shown us that we need to be closer to our family. And because that's the bond, that's your immediate bond of success and coping, because your family members are going through with it too. So now you can have a conversation about how you're feeling with people that you trust. Now, we're not talking to family members that are negative Nellies, that just complain all the time. And you don't want to be part of their PT party and join their party. They could have their own party over there but you want to make sure that you're connected with positive. Like my grandmother, she's 94, and during COVID, she's my motivation and my inspiration. If I'm ever down, I'll always call her. So this is I call her young. This is a young lady, a young woman that had a repetitive pattern of life. She lives alone. Her husband died many, many years ago. And her only social was going to the grocery store. And she used to drive, but up until 3 months ago, she stopped driving. Thank you. We are now safe on the road. But her daily routine, her weekly routine included going to the grocery store. She would go to church on Sunday, which is her social. That's her social, was church, because here it is, she's one of the elders in the church. She's seen all her friends pass away and she's still alive. So church was her social. Twice a week, she would go to Bible study with, other people, not of her age, but other people. So she would be the one conducting the Bible study classes twice a week. She would do her own laundry, go to the laundromat, and she would take walks through the park and then come home and do gardening in the backyard. Well, all of the above, except the gardening in the backyard, disappeared during COVID, right? So what we had to implement as a family member, I called all of her grandchildren and her great grandchildren, and I said, we need to call her every single week and be consistent with that. Even if she has to repeat the same thing over and over again. And by 94, all your grandmothers know to ask you about is, how are you doing? How's the weather? How's the kids? What are you doing? How's business? It's the same thing. It doesn't change, right? But that's all they know. And it's okay, because that is what she needs. So she's not one of those people who does videos. She does not understand the cell phone thing. My neighbor next door once a month would take her phone over for me so she can see me and my daughter on video chat, and that's new to her. She does not have a TV. She listens to the radio, and the same radio with the aluminum foil and antenna. She reads, she gets AARP. It's the funniest thing that we laugh about it every single time I get on the phone with her. She receives these magazines from AARP. So that's her magazine to the world. Just the other day, she was saying, I got my AARP newsletter, and it said that doctors are now doing their examinations via the internet. Now, she doesn't understand the internet. That's not, she's like, that's amazing. So you don't have to leave your house to go. You can just log on and then just show your body on the video. And it was the funniest, because, she's visual. She's learned to have made that visual image. That's how she grew up. So reach out to your family members. We pray together. We talk about different topics. We stay away from the negative topics. We stick to the positive topics as to what's happening. We talk about the vaccine is coming up. She doesn't want to take the vaccine. She's never had a cold in her entire life. She's never been sick. Wow. So I don't feel comfortable, and she doesn't feel comfortable taking the vaccine because she's literally only going to the yard, and she wears a mask in the yard. Go figure. But nobody goes to visit her except her son got vaccinated. So he can, because he's her caregiver now. He's the only living child that she has. And all the grandchildren live abroad. Everybody else lives abroad. So he goes and he takes her for a drive around the countryside, and they stay in the car. Or if she wants to go to hang out on the beach, she'll go and just stay there for a little while. She doesn't go in the water anymore like she used to. She probably take a bucket and bring the salt water home. She's getting up there. A lot of people, like I post on Facebook because my community of Versailles is really big online on social media. So I will have my online community call her as well to check upon her. So that's like a positive example as what we should be doing as humans. Mm-hmm. Just reaching out and just making connections in a positive way. I'm not saying that if one of your family members who is usually upbeat and now they are having some, feeling a sort of way, to disregard them. No, listen to them as well, but then offer them some encouragement and motivation. Don't leave them in that realm of depressed state or anxiety or worry or whatever. Bring it home with a laughter, bring it home with something positive. End the conversation with something that when that person gets off the phone, you go, you know what? I came on here feeling this way, and now I feel so much better.
No,
Yeah.
I totally agree. I think the one thing over this last year and a bit now, it has taught me to be vulnerable. So I think, so many people prior to all this, it's like, I'm good, I'm fine. You hear the slogan, right? Everything's fine. But the reality is everything's not fine. And for maybe like the first time in, the 2000s, the whole world has felt like everything's not fine all at the same time, right? So me being vulnerable has actually, I think, helped me to stay grounded. So, times where the kids were home for all those months, if I told Brian, listen, I'm done. I need to go out. I need to go take a nap, and just saying that because before it'd be like, you just keep pushing through.
Yeah.
Or, calling a friend and telling them I'm vulnerable. Like I'm feeling like I'm getting to my end.
Yeah.
Saying I got to meet up for a walk so we can get out and talk. Before, I think it would have been maybe me waiting for somebody to say, hey, you want to meet up? Right.
Yeah.
But just knowing that everybody is pretty much in the same boat, I think out of all times, just allowing yourself to feel vulnerable and to express that to other people. Right.
Yeah. And let your kids know that too. We don't want to no longer, COVID should have taught us that we should no longer pretend to be so strong in front of our kids.
For sure.
When in fact, we look back at our parents, well, in my case, my grandmother, and I look at her as this strong brute of a woman. But I also said at the end that I don't want to be that strong because that strong did not look healthy to me.
Right.
I've never, only twice I've seen her cry in my entire life. And I encourage moms to cry with your children. Let them see you crying and explain to them why you're crying. Build that communication to let that child know it is okay to feel hurt. It is okay to feel overwhelmed. And crying actually releases those endorphins that you're holding inside of your mind, and that your mind is just like, I need to get out. I need these emotions to escape my mind. When you cry, it's just like laughter. When you laugh, you feel laughter, you feel rejuvenated, right? But when you cry, it's a sense of relief. Like all the things that were bothering you and having you built up those angry feelings, sad feelings, concern, worry feelings inside, just feels so much better. Just getting it out. It's out now. And now you're so much clearer that you can now find a solution and be able to at least, write it down as to what it is that was bothering you, and then form a clear, conscious solution to moving forward.
Right now, kind of unrelated, but just in terms of your grandmother, I think a good strategy for those phone calls is maybe to find the most obscure thing that you can find in the Bible and ask her about that, because that'll probably get her on a different topic.
We're gonna be there for 4 hours.
Now, I want to I want to quote Steve Jobs here. There's something he said, like obviously many years ago, but he said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. So just in terms of your experience growing up with, with a mother who had all of the challenges that you outlined, I'm sure that helped prepare you somewhat for being a mother of kids with, as you said, different abilities.
Yes, unknowingly. I just walked the path. What it led to, when I moved to the States, my first son was already showing strange behaviors. It didn't look like my mother's at the time. This was a whole new type of behavior. He was suspended from and kicked out of 3 kindergarten classes. He was disobedient. He did not follow authority at all. It's like he poked fun at authority just to make you angry, and that didn't look right to me. However, I also knew that if I stayed on the island, there's a possibility he would not get any services because that didn't exist. So I had to leave. I took upon myself, actually left because of domestic violence. And I'm a survivor of domestic violence, and I moved to Florida to escape the domestic violence situation. And while I was here, I was finally being able to get my son looked at. Because that's the one thing that I promised myself, is that I will not follow the same pattern of my mom. If I needed help, if somebody offered help, I was going to take the help, you know? And that's exactly what I did. The schools offered help, and rather than be that parent of, don't label my child, don't tell me my child has a problem, I was like, okay, tell me how to get the help for him. We see that he's a problem. This is a problem, not he's a problem, but there's a problem. How can we fix this? How can we make this better? And at this age of 7, he was diagnosed with oppositional behavior defiant, which means that he does not respect authority, will not take, orders, or punishing him was probably the hardest thing for me to do, was to find discipline. It was hard for me to discipline him throughout the years. Like I honestly felt like a failure as a mom that could not get my own child under control. I wish I knew about homeschooling then, because going to school meant me picking him up every single day, because the teachers just could not take care of him in school. He was disruptive, he was tormenting, he was bullying, he wasn't listening. It was just a royal challenge. And being that that was my first child, I felt like I had done this, and I got him at 6. I was young. I was 16 when I had him. So I beat myself up and had that mother's guilt of, oh my gosh, I'm the most terrible mother in the whole world. These teachers probably think that I don't have no control over my child. I don't know, I'm just like this worst parent of the world, not realizing he had an illness. It was in that point I reached out to different nonprofit organizations who dealt with mental health. And that's when I started diving into mental health advocacy, because now I had this label that nobody I felt could help me. And I felt so alone in how I was feeling, because I didn't see anybody that looked or had anything like he did. And that's how I started my mental health advocacy, and learn more about mental health, and learn more about my mom's condition, and realize that I need to be more sympathetic, and I need to be more compassionate towards this illness.
And then you mentioned too, with your other 3 children, they had some different abilities too that you also had to adapt to.
Yes. So by the time my son was 17, he was diagnosed with bipolar. And then my second son started showing sadness at the age of 13. And I put him into therapy. He's successfully living with depression. And my third son was born with autism. And then my daughter, she had her own learning challenges throughout life, and at the age of 14 was formally diagnosed with autism.
So yeah, obviously the story doesn't end there. For those who are familiar with your story, you've been able to come to Atlanta, and you've been very successful, and you've been able to share that success with your daughter as well, who's obviously doing very well in business. So can you share with us about that?
Yes. When my daughter was diagnosed with autism, I had my initial emotion was, but the stats are 1 in 4. How did I get 4 in 4? And then the fact that my daughter is actually adopted from Cambodia, so it wasn't hereditary. Then my very next moment was, I was meant to be. I was meant to be their mother. And then I went into motherly protection mode, because when she got her diagnosis for autism, the doctors told me, oh, we will have to live with her for the rest of her life. She'll never be able to drive a car. She'll never be able to live on her own. She'll probably never go to college. They just pretty much wrote her off as an existing human being. And I was like, no, I see that she has the skills, because up until that point, my children were my packers. They were my free labor workers for Amazon. But in essence, I was teaching them business skills while they were helping me to run the business, right? And at that point, we were financially stable. And I said to myself, if Amazon, selling on Amazon for all those years that I was raising them, not myself after the divorce, had gotten us to financial freedom, and she knows the business to a degree, what if she really knows the business and has her own, you know? So I gifted her store at the age of 15. She wanted an iPhone. So I, as the proud mother that I am and the loving mother that I am, I got the iPhone box and I put her username and password on the website on a piece of paper in the box and wrapped it up so nicely in a gift. She was not happy. She didn't understand that this was better than an iPhone. But, I told her that what I'm giving you has the possibility of being worth more than an iPhone, you know? And once she started running her store, I found that after about the third week, I would do the beginning steps with her over and over again in that day. And then I would not stop until I knew that she knew how to do this specific phase. And I felt confident that she got it. However, the way how her mind works, about 75% stays, the other 25% is gone. Like it never existed ever. It's not one of those moments that you forget and then later on you remember. No, it's gone. And we don't know which parts of that day didn't come over in the next day. It's like figuring it all out all over again. So the next day I said, all right, you ready to begin? And she's like, what are we doing? And I said, well, we're going to do this part. You did this yesterday. She's like, no, we didn't. And it was so heartbreaking to watch as a mother, like, wow, nothing stayed for real. Like it did not stay. And it didn't stay because she wasn't interested. It just didn't stay because of her mind. She wasn't intentionally not trying to remember or playing it off or whatever we may think as teenagers and not paying attention. It wasn't that. So because I didn't want to further get frustrated, because I was now starting to build frustration, because now I had planned to do things for my own store and thinking that she knows how to do this. So that set me back from what I needed to do for my store. So at that night, I said, I've got to find a solution to this. And I recorded the steps. I sat there all night long, team no sleep, and I recorded a series of videos and I placed the videos on a Word document, in a Word document, and with call to action as to what these videos were. And the videos were 3 minutes long because I knew her attention span was very short. And I gave her the videos and I watched her manage her store from these videos. So a couple of times she'll ask me questions, but it wasn't like taking up a monotonous amount of my time. And I was like, wow, she's a visual learner. So I took that experience and I went to the school and I explained to her IEP counselor, we need to try this. So at one of her services I was able to allow was for her to record the classroom every day. That way she can come home and rewatch her classroom on her own time and catch up to the next day. And she'll always have this information to rewatch. So she got in the pattern of at night when she came home from school, she would watch those videos from the classroom. And then before she went to school, 4 o'clock in the morning, she would get up and watch that day again so that she's caught up onto the new day. And that's how we got her through high school. Wow. And then from her success of watching her manage her store, I said, well, if I could teach my autistic daughter how to manage her own store, well, I can teach so many other people, whether it's single moms, people with disabilities, I could just teach so many people how to do this. So I launched my course, people signed up, and I had so many success stories. As a matter of fact, my entire team of instructors were one student of mine. And now they are also teaching other people how to sell on Amazon. And today, at the age of 17, she was able to walk in and purchase her very first 5-bedroom home debt-free.
Amazing.
So now she's living on her own. She has her own place. And at the age of 18, she bought herself a used Jeep and would practice on it in the neighborhood every single day for 4 years straight. Until she felt confident enough, she got her license, and then she walked into Nissan and bought her own car.
Amazing.
And here we are today. She's 20 years old with a net worth of over $400,000, debt-free, going to college, paying for her own college, just living her life. She loves to travel, so she saves her money to travel. She reinvests back into her company. She's getting ready to learn the stock market. It's just been an amazing transition for her that I'm super, super proud of as her mom.
Oh, of course. I think the one word I use a lot when talking with our kids, because again, we all know that kids are all different. We know that, but even different learners and all that kind of stuff, perseverance, right? It's okay, you don't get it that one time, but you got to keep going. And me as the mom, learning to be patient. If I'm teaching something or showing something and one doesn't get it and the other does, oh, but why, right? And sitting back and saying, no, it's not that. It's okay, why aren't you getting it? Is it
Yeah.
that you're just not processing it, right? So I think that's so cute for every parent out there, just to realize, like, really learn how your kids pick things up, how they learn, and work
Yes.
that. And
Yeah.
like, look at that story. That's crazy.
Yes. From from something that I was trying to get her to do personally, it ended up being part of her academics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know?
Awesome.
Now, the other thing too, because there's so much of your story that we didn't even talk about, like, just based on what I've been able to learn about you, you've had a lot of difficult times. There's a lot of things that you really came up through. Now, just thinking back to when you were alone with 4 children who had differing abilities. Did you ever see yourself where you are today?
Oh gosh, no. No. Like once, I had my first home at 28. And then I got married, and then we had our own 4-bedroom house. And then to lose that in the divorce. Oh, what was credit? Credit didn't, like, I could care less about credit. Credit was just non-existent to me. Like, I had just run credit up because I was struggling. I was struggling with these kids. So I never thought that I would get to the point of owning my own home again. And my focus had always been on, let me just get these kids to high school and graduate, and we'll work it out after that. you know
Mhm.
and my entire life centered around my children. I didn't have a social life. I just stayed focused on them because they needed me. And the only thing that I was sure of is that once I got them to high school, then I could live. Then whatever living looked like
Hmm.
after that. I didn't know it would look like this, but I'm happy. This was never the goal. I never saw myself becoming a self-made multimillionaire. I never saw myself owning multiple homes and multiple cars. That was not a vision, a goal or vision on my vision board. Like, if I was to do a vision board, it would probably look like, I want to laugh. I want to be in a relationship with a loving relationship. I want to garden. It would have never I want to impact others. I want to help another person get through life and see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I want to see people live in this moment of clarity for me. I never, ever, ever put as one of my goals anything materialistic. I don't feel that that's what God intended us for. Because I see the materialistic things of, these are blessings that, because of what I've been through in life, I'm able to now live in a nice house because God has blessed me with the ability to earn it. That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
Now, just to like I really want to focus on someone who might be in a similar situation to what you were in at the time. If you could take what you know now
Huh.
and tell yourself, give yourself some advice, share some knowledge with yourself, 15 years ago, kind of when you were getting started in this journey, what would you say?
Worry less. Worry less. Because I worried every day, not just for me, but for my children. I worried if there will ever be productive citizens. I worried if the world would ever accept them. I worried about them being bullied. I worried about society norms, and I worried about what struggles that they would go through, because of course, this is a different path for them. Their struggles are definitely different than mine. And I wish that I had focused less on worrying and focused more on teaching them self-love and acceptance and teaching others about their conditions and not accepting anyone in their world who does not accept them. And definitely not live for the approval of others. And that it's okay to let some people go in your life.
Oh, that's a big one, right? And I think the earlier you learn that, you talk to some people, well, once I hit 40, I let I all those cares were gone and, worries were gone. But it's like, if you could be in your 30s and not worry so much about what other people are thinking and what move you're making for your family or for yourself, man, the freedom I think that comes with that would just be I don't even know the word, would just be awesome.
It's definitely a lot easier when those things don't matter to you anymore.
Yeah.
But then there's a counterpart to that.
Yeah.
So with my daughter, all the things that I did, she at 20 is already in her 40s. She has a 40 mentality.
Right.
So now we have a whole new struggle because I'm going to pray for the man that she marries. Because she has built she's overcome so much of her own obstacles. I look at her and I go, well, damn, if I was you at your age, shoot, I'll be a trillionaire right now. Because she's so confident, but it's not cocky or arrogant confidence. It's humility with her confidence. She knows her work, so she knows what she's not going to accept from anybody. But at the same time, she's an introvert that has doesn't have she's building, I should say, I want to say building. She's building social skills to be with other people. However, she's not learned yet the skills of learning to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So that's the learning strategy that we are at now in life, where she just started going on a dating app with my guidance, of course. Document this because it is hilarious. We have a profile, we selected pictures. I can't get it to swipe right.
Keep swiping.
She just keeps swiping left. I'm like, you need to swipe right. I don't see anybody that's interested. She has that fear now because we went over the questions of the do's and the don'ts of what to do. And when we were going over the questions of, you need to ask this question in order, and if you want to see this person have any commonalities with you. And I said, the return questions could be X, Y, Z. Her response was, that's intrusive. That's my business. I'm like, you need to connect with people. We're getting there. We got her on the app.
One step at a time. Sort of how we do this thing called parenting, one step at a time.
One day she'll step right.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Now, I just want to give you the opportunity to really share with us anything that you're working on or anything that we can expect from you in the future. I know, obviously, I mentioned the one book. Do you want to kind of highlight the books that you've written, the courses that you're doing, and anything else that's on the horizon?
Sure. So I have Journey Untold. This is actually in teen middle schools as their learning curriculum activity. They actually read this book in the month of May, and they have a whole discussion and have to write essays and stuff. So if there's any schools that are listening in and your listening audience and would like to incorporate this book into the learning curriculum, I will be happy to set that up so that the students can get the book or download the book and have this conversation started. Because this is from the mind of a child 7 years old through my teen years living with a mother with paranoid schizophrenia. So it's called Journey Untold, My Mother's Struggle with Mental Illness. And then it talks about the success period that I have reached at this point. And then it picks up with The Journey Continues, which is a little bigger. because my adult life had a whole lot going on. This book stemmed from I had ended a engagement and I developed silent anxiety. And it talks about after my marriage, the court ordered me to go into therapy. And in that therapy session, it was mandatory therapy. I was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, which made sense that I was living with it all that time. And that was my brain's mechanism to cope through the things that I had seen with my mom. Didn't connect the dots at the time. I was just very forgetful, not focusing on the task. I would even leave kids in school and think I picked them up and completely forget. I forgot a whole car seat on top of the car. The baby wasn't in it. I remember to put the baby in the car. But little, and like I still struggle with remembering to eat, the basic essentials of life. My task list on my phone will drive anybody crazy because it's just notifications all day long of things that I need to do. But through learning that I have ADD, I've been on my own said, okay, I have this issue or ability. How can you help me to parent these kids living with it? I did that on my own. Didn't think of it as a thing to bring to court to help me, look better. That was not even on my mind. I did it because I really wanted to learn how to live with this because obviously it was a problem. It was starting to be a problem in my life as a mom. So I took that on. And this is also talking about the male relationships that I was in, what happened, but what lesson I learned through it. So this is my therapeutic. This is actually my therapy sessions, jotted down and penned to hope that another woman can learn the coping skills, can learn the struggles that I've been in. I've been in a domestic violence situation. I go deep into that. How I got pregnant, my innocence was stolen, and my child was blessed from that innocence. In the back of the book, actually, because in this last book, the first journey untold, people would reach out to me and ask me how they can. I read your book, now how can I get services? And I felt like that was so cumbersome of me telling them where to, helping them search for services and stuff like that. So in this book, in the back of the book, actually has an appendix of therapies around the country by state. So that so that when they finish reading the book, if they feel that they need to speak to someone, because the book is about therapy and coping skills, and not all of them, but majority of them. And if they too wanted to be clear on the other end and learn self-love and learn to own their power, they didn't have to contact me. They could just go straight to the back of the index and select the therapy, go to the website, call them, whatever, and go and look them up and see and get therapy for themselves, And I also have a whole chapter about my therapist and her background if they're interested in her. So this has really been an amazing, and both of them hit the bestsellers list like the same day that they came out. So yeah, it's a powerful book of becoming who I am today. And once I penned this, I didn't pen my therapy sessions for nobody else but myself because I wanted to have notes to go back on. If life happened again, I could then go back through my notes and go back over those coping skills that I had learned. But after maybe 4 months after, I said, you know what, another woman could benefit from this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went ahead and published it and launched.
I must say the stigma that I can appreciate, that the fact that it's ending is around therapy, especially for, I'm 38, so people, ladies, obviously is all I can speak to, but ladies in, their 30s, and before, it would be, oh, I can't, like, I don't need to see a counselor. I don't need to see anybody. No, that's for people who are like broken, and, the list could go on and on. So as I talk to people and different things like that, I like that it's just becoming a conversation that, what? Yeah, I need a number for somebody. I spoke to my counselor the other day. So I really appreciate the fact that, that's there, and you're another person who's helping to end that stigma.
Yes, absolutely. And therapy doesn't mean that you're sick. It just means that you're stuck.
Yeah.
That's it. It just means that you're stuck and you need help moving forward.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, this has been a great conversation. I thank you for making the time to speak with us today. And again, good luck with everything that you're doing. It doesn't seem like you really need luck, but but we just wish you continued success and everything. And again, thank you for making the time.
Thanks for listening to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. For more ways to listen, connect with us on social media. To be a guest or to partner with us, check out our link tree at Disrupt the Everyday. Join us next time for more ways to disrupt the everyday.